Now, hundreds of South Africans with blocked IDs threatening to shut down Home Affairs in Tshwane. The High Court in Pretoria ruled last year that blocking IDs without due process is unlawful, but the department has been slow to act. Those impacted will march to the department's offices in Pretoria yet again. Newzroom Afrika's Veronica Machwadi is there for us. Veronica, it's been described as dehumanizing, re-traumatizing, and of course, bringing people into a state of a lack of dignity. The worst part, or one of the worst parts of the story, is that it's people already living in poverty that are the worst impacted by this issue.
That's right, Michelle. In fact, we heard there from some of the residents or the civic organization that is demanding essentially for the Home Affairs Department to not only expedite the issuing of these people's identity documents, but to, of course, implement that court order which found the blocking of these IDs to be unconstitutional. And just to really put a face to the people behind this unfair, this unconstitutional practice, and as you've called it, this dehumanizing, approach. I'm just going to step out of shot, Michelle, because earlier you'd remember it was quite a charged demonstration. There was a lot of singing that was happening, but now we are really starting to see the faces behind those thousands of people who have really been denied the right to exist. Legitimate citizens of South Africa that have essentially been left in limbo with no ID documents. Others saying that they had their IDs, but over some time, when they went to do something as easy as pick up a SASSA card or go to the Home Affairs Department to pick up a marriage certificate, it was found that they were told that, no, you have been blocked, you've been identified as an illegal or a foreign national. Others are saying that, there is something, your ID document has been under investigation. And really, Michelle, amongst them are the elderly, amongst them are the most vulnerable, some living with disabilities. Others have been actually new mothers that have not been able to register their children. And they say that they've been living like ghosts for years, unable to work, study, or even access those basic healthcare services or even social grants. Many of them saying that this is because their IDs were suddenly marked as fraudulent or under investigation. And we're going to take an opportunity to speak to some of those that are part of the demonstration today. Ntate, you're speaking to Veronica Machwadi here on Newzroom Afrika. Ntate, tell me, is your ID document blocked? How long has it been blocked, and just the situation that you've faced?
Since 2016 was a smart card. Yeah.
And in Ntate, how by blockile balaring hoen?
Hey, ke ile ka ba sala morao ha ke kopa statement ba re ban suspect hore ke tswa Lesotho. Statement is okay na le sona.
And how ba bontsha di pampiri tsa hao ba reng?
Ba batla pampiri ya sekolo. Mara nna sekolo se ke ile ka kena ho sona na le sa mobu. Khale kwa.
Re ke kene Ntate mona dumela Ntate Ntate o go bue le nna ke a bona o teng mona o batho ba bagolo ba fihle mona bothata ke Ntate ka ID document ya hao.
Block ID. Since 2016, yeah, 2016. I was here on 2018. I fixed my ID, but she said to me, must bring the letter from school. I'll give the letter, but still it's not on.
And still, Lohanache, have also blocked your ID.
I was still until now.
And Kiabona Ntate, when I'm Hulu, I'm sure Utloka di Sasa Grande, what you told her.
I'm told Lutu.
Nase ke fitile ka 7 years. Ke fitile ka 7 years.
Nearly 5 years, I'm told. 5 to 6 years, I told SAS.
Because of this problem?
Because, yeah, the problem to block the ID. When I was there in SAS, I'll put my fingers, not open my yeah.
They send us to Home Affairs.
Yeah.
If you go to SAS, they send you to Home Affairs, fixing the.
And that's the lived experience of just some of the elderly, but more vulnerable people. You heard there saying that for about 5 years now, they've not been able to even get any SASSA grants because of this problem. But there are others as well that are affected by this. And Tate, thanks for your time. Just talk to us a little bit about, you've come to join this demonstration. How long has your ID been blocked, and what have they told you about the reason?
Morning to the viewers. I saw my problem when I went to vote on national election. I think it was last year. So there I saw that my ID is blocked. So I went to the bank. Still the bank doesn't work. So at the moment I don't have ID. So I'm living without ID. So please to unblock my ID because I need it back because it's very important to me. I need it back to myself.
Right, Michelle, we're going to keep speaking to more residents, but I'm going to ask my colleague Debo just to show you amongst the vulnerable that there is a mother coming from Mpumalanga. From Witbank exactly. She came here today when she heard that there would be a demonstration outside of the offices of Home Affairs. That is her newborn baby, Michelle, who she has not been able to get a birth certificate for her because her ID is blocked. And this is really just the kind of crisis that this has caused for many of the citizens here. And you could even see as well from the faces of the many that are here that it's frustration, it's disappointment, and it's getting to a point for many of them where they have been seeking answers for years, but yet nothing still is taking place. And we know that the department insists that measures are being taken place, that they are trying to expedite this issue, and that this in fact took place because they were trying to curb identity fraud and of course that fraudulent identity documents that happened. But at the heart of today's demonstration, many of them saying that they've come to Home Affairs to reclaim their dignity and of course to remind the state that without an ID, they essentially do not exist. Back to you.
The story is so incredibly heartbreaking. Veronica, before we let you go, there's some important context here as well, insofar as the elderly people who are impacted by this issue about blocking IDs. Of course, pre-1994, people were carrying passbooks. There was then a process to update the population register. People had to essentially prove their existence. And for the elderly people there, which is why we started off our discussion by talking about this issue of dehumanizing and re-traumatizing. People who went through that process from a passbook to an identity document in 1994 are essentially reliving that process.
Certainly, Michelle, I think you would have heard from the first gentleman that we spoke to. He said that the reason why Home Affairs has not been able to reissue him a new ID is that he'd have to go back to the school where he got an education from. And you heard him there saying that he can't go back to that school because he said it Kasusutu, where he said Inolo Skolo Samobu, meaning it was one of those makeshift schools in mud huts, essentially. And that's how far back this kind of a crisis goes, where you're speaking to a group of people, essentially, Michelle, that come out of a time and a generation where things were not necessarily formalized. And again, you speak of that re-trauma. And he's saying that he cannot go back to that school because at this point it doesn't exist, and that he was getting an informal education from a mud hut. And so for him to be able to get this ID document, this is a massive obstacle and something as well, again, that it seems the Home Affairs Department is not considering. They are treating, I suppose, this matter as you know, with all the relevant documents, you would think, but they need to be treating it almost as a case-by-case matter. The other elderly gentleman who was speaking there saying that he was in fact able to go to elections as he tried to vote. They did not find him on the system because they said your ID is fraudulent. So it also speaks to the fact that it's not only affecting their livelihoods, but even impacting that democratic right, that democratic process. And it really does speak to not only a failure in the system, but a massive impact for the lives here, Michelle. And again, as you've mentioned, that there is a lot of context in regards to this, that many of the elderly here would have to go up and down to various offices day by day to get this done. This is, of course, again, despite the fact that a High Court judgment found this to be unconstitutional, and they say still, they are still waiting for that identity document. An unfair process, many of them saying that they've had to handle the fees, the costs of going to various offices by themselves, the admin work of course, having to go to various schools. In fact, there was another gentleman I spoke to where he showed me what really was a book, a docket of, documentation where he had to go and get, an affidavit, a certificate from his previous school, something from the metro to show that he was in fact living, a proof of residence. He had to go get account details as well as to show where he has accounts from. It's really just a mammoth task for some of these individuals, and while they comply, still yet nothing is happening for them in regards to that. And we continue, of course, to watch the story and to speak to some of those individuals. 2.5 million people at its peak, Michelle, when this issue was flagged of these blocked identity documents. The Home Affairs Department saying it has brought that number down, but the reality is each and every day that process is delayed. These are the faces, these are the people that are severely impacted, and one saying to themselves, just when will these residents be able to live that dignified life that this is clearly stopping them from getting?
Of course, the important question now is, what will Home Affairs say? Where are the Home Affairs officials to come and address the people gathered there? And of course, we are also, as Newzroom Afrika, trying to get in touch with the Home Affairs Minister, Leon Schreiber. Just as soon as we do, we'll have that important conversation with him as well.